And now, Delaware's own resident Beatlemaniac, Joel Glazier. And he's here to exhibit the extent of his madness. Joel is a nationally recognized expert on the Paul is Dead rumor. He's a collector extraordinaire, possessor of the largest scrapbook of Beatles clippings, teacher of a University of Delaware continuing education course called The Era Remembered, The Beatles, and an inveterate attender of Beatles conventions. Joel, I want to shake your hand.
That's Hey Jude, and I want to hold your hand.
Well, what do you expect from me? I'm not the expert. You are. That's why we have you here.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
Joel, when did you get started on this Beatlemania?
Back in 1964, when the Beatles first came to America. They were on Ed Sullivan's show, and I was in 7th grade, which was the right age for rock and roll music, and ever since I followed the group.
Mm-hmm. Now, when and where did you attend your first convention, and how many have you gone to?
The very first one ever was in summer of 1974 in Boston, and I was there along with 1,200 others.
Right.
And I've been to about 12 or 13 since then in all parts of the country.
Now, is it true that you have the largest scrapbook of clippings that there is?
Well, from all the conventions that I've been to, I'm the only one who can claim that. I brought along one volume here tonight.
One volume?
Yeah, this is for 1967, okay?
Yes.
And you have to remember that was well into the Beatles' career. So my 64 one is much thicker.
I see. Oh, boy, you've got everything in here.
Yeah.
Now, what else do you collect? Have you brought some other items along here? I see we have 4 little Beatles up here.
Yeah, the famous Beatle dolls, one variety of them. And I try to collect more exotic things than just your typical memorabilia. For example, here's a book in French about the Beatles. And this record is from the Soviet Union. It's a Beatle record, and you can see it's Russian writing. And I think we had that song playing a little while ago.
I thought they were counter-revolutionary.
Yeah, it's interesting the choice of records that the Soviet government has allowed to be released over there. Some of them are quite controversial, even by our standards. And then your typical Beatle tray, and of course this T-shirt, and the button. And I've given you a button for this evening. That's the famous flasher "I Love John and the Beatles" button. And of course, my button refers to the time when they tried to deport John Lennon from this country, and there was a campaign surrounding that. It seems so long ago where they tried to kick out John Lennon, but it was another era in the Beatles' history.
Now, how do you like teaching a course at the University of Delaware?
I liked it very much, and the students seem to have liked it. And as a matter of fact, I've just learned that the course will be repeated in November, and it was an exceptional course with exceptional students.
Now, can night students or continuing education students take that?
Yeah, it's geared toward continuing education students, and we had people from age 15 to 55 enrolled in the first course.
I understand you have a book in the works also.
Yeah, the book is concerning the mystery of Paul McCartney's death. Now, this is an article that I had written for a Beatle magazine surrounding the rumor that Paul McCartney had died in 1966 in a car crash, and his death was covered up. And we started to find clues. Now, I brought along some albums for a quick review of some of the clues. In 1969, that album, Abbey Road, came out. And we thought that that wasn't really Paul on the cover, because you see he's barefoot and out of step. So they're drawing attention to Paul. Plus, he's holding a cigarette in his right hand, and he was left-handed. So the idea is that there's an imposter posing for Paul.
And the license plate, I remember that one, says 28 if.
28 if, because Paul would have been 28 if he were alive when the album came out. So we then started to look back on other albums, like the Sgt. Pepper album you have there, and you see that's a grave scene with the Beatles looking down at themselves, and there's Paul's bass guitar formed out of the yellow flowers, and then there's a hand over Paul's head, which symbolizes death. And there's a lot of famous dead heroes in the crowd scene. So there's several hundred of those clues, and in my book I'm compiling all of them, plus formulating theories as to why the clues were put there.
What's ahead for you, Joel? Do you anticipate being a Beatles fan forever?
Probably. I mean, the group broke up in 1970, and they're still my favorite group. And like I said, I'll be teaching the course again at the university, and I just gave an assembly at a high school in Connecticut last month, and we'll be speaking at different Beatle conventions. The book is taking up most of my time now, and I really like to give these talks at universities or high schools, because I am a teacher, currently at Dickinson High School, and there's 2 things I like, the Beatles and teaching, and I'm in the rare position of combining 2 of my good interests, you know, the Beatles and teaching. Powers that be have determined I won't be teaching here next year, but I hope maybe the book will be done and I can start visiting campuses around the country.
Well, thanks, Joel Glazier, for being with us and sharing some of your insights on the Beatles, who have obviously been your ticket to ride.
Oh, thank you. You know your Beatles songs.